Chapter 59. Crisis at Homfa Temple. Amitabha. Qian, since you are stubborn and refuse to repent, then I have to deal with you. Martial monks, form up. Master Fei Yuan gave the command. Immediately, dozens of martial monks shouted loudly and rushed toward Qian. HMPH, you weak chickens, without even an acquired martial artist. You just dying for nothing. Qian's eyes flashed with a sharp light. Then, his figure moved like a ghost, advancing instead of retreating, and suddenly penetrated into the group of martial monks. PFF. Qian raised his curved saber. Suddenly, black lights flashed and disappeared. Many martial monks clutched their necks suddenly, blood splattered, and they fell to the ground one after another. Many martial monks widened their eyes, even writhing in pain. The gap was too big. Qian's footwork was extremely excellent, and these martial monks couldn't even touch him. But the curved saber in Qian's hand was like a ghost. Once the black light flashed, a martial monk would fall. In a short time, 10 more martial monks fell to the ground. The whole open space was almost dyed blood red, shocking to the eye. Even the 2 abbots couldn't sit still at this moment. Stop, Qian, stop. It was us that expelled you from the temple. If you want revenge, take our lives. Amitabha. The 2 abbots sat cross-legged on the ground, waiting quietly for Qian to take action. He, you 2 old monks are really pitiful. But why didn't you pity me back then? Since you want to die, then I will fulfill your wish. Qian's eyes were full of killing intent, and even his expression seemed distorted. His figure was like a ghost, and he instantly rushed toward the 2 abbots. Master. Some of the novices and monks around them shed tears. They knew that the 2 Zen masters did not possess any martial art skills. They were only scholar monks from the Homfa Temple. In the Homfa Temple, the status of scholar monks was much higher than that of martial monks. However, no matter how high their status was, or how profound their Buddhist teachings were, they were powerless in the face of the current situation. They couldn't stop Qian's curved saber. Qian's curved saber had already reached the faces of the 2 Zen masters. It seemed that at the next moment, the curved saber would cut through their necks. Amitabha. The 2 Zen masters closed their eyes. Bang. Suddenly, there was a muffled sound. The crowd only saw a blurry figure appear in front of the 2 Zen masters in an instant. Qian's curved saber didn't work for the first time. It was a saber. A seemingly ordinary saber. But it was this ordinary saber that firmly caught Qian's curved saber without even trembling in his hand. Who are you? Qian's eyes widened, and he immediately backed away, seemingly very wary of the stranger who suddenly appeared before him. The 2 Zen masters also sensed something was wrong, so they opened their eyes. After seeing Lin Fei, the 2 Zen masters shook their heads and sighed, "Dona Lin, you are just a pilgrim. Why involve yourself in these disputes?" However, Lin Fei shook his head. He glanced at the dead martial monks lying all around. There were more than 20 martial monks, all killed by the man with the curved saber in front of him. Moreover, all of them were killed with a single saber strike. The man in front of him, Qian, was definitely not a good person. Old Zen masters, right and wrong, I don't want to get involved. During this time, I have disturbed the 2 masters many times, please forgive me. I don't have any gifts to give either. Since this happened today, I cannot pretend that I didn't see anything. So, I will give this villain's head to the 2 masters as a gift. Lin Fei looked at Qian with a cold gaze. Whoosh! At the next moment, Lin Fei displayed the flowing clove skill. With a step, he instantly crossed several meters of distance. You want to kill me? No one has been able to kill me for so many years. You're asking for death. Qian's killing intent surged in his heart. However, he was cautious and careful by nature. The angrier he was, the calmer he became. Seeing Lin Fei approaching him, Qian immediately wanted to retreat. But no matter how fast his reaction was, Lin Fei's saber was even faster. Especially with the boost of his 3-in-1 inner power, Lin Fei's saber speed was simply incredible. Swish! Lin Fei slashed with his saber. 10 shadows appeared instantly. They seemed to envelop Qian's entire body. 10 shadows in every direction. Saber's sharp blade was firmly locked onto Qian. A sense of danger rose in his heart. He wanted to retreat, to avoid it, but he found that the saber was too fast, so fast that he didn't have time to use his lightness skill. How could saber be so fast? This was Qian's last thought. But the explosive power of the triple inner power was unleashed, and Lin Fei's saber easily cut off Qian's head. Blood splattered everywhere. Lin Fei's back was turned towards Qian, but Qian's head had already fallen to the ground. It was still rolling. Third. Qian's headless body fell heavily to the ground. Many novices and monks around saw this scene. Their eyes widened in shock. Their faces showed a trace of disbelief. Qian, who had just been invincible and seemed to be an unparalleled villain, couldn't even block a move, had already lost his head and died completely. The once grand Buddhist temple instantly became silent, and one could hear a pin drop. Chapter 60. Mystery Token. Amitabha. Master Faiyuan and Master Faju recited a Buddhist chant. Lin Fei went straight to Qian's body. He searched the body for a while but found no martial arts secret manuals. There were only some silver tickets and a black token. Lin Fei didn't look closely and put everything into his pocket. "Two masters, thank you for your hospitality. Farewell," Lin Fei said. He then turned around and left Homfa Temple with big strides. Lin Fei quickly returned to his home and was immediately called by his parents. In the living room of the Lin family, Lin's father and mother looked at Lin Fei with the solemn expressions. "Fei, you've been gone for more than 10 days. I heard from the steward that you went to Luo City." Lin's father asked. "Father, the Zhong family in Luo City has requested my help. They encountered some trouble and wrote to me. I naturally had to go and solve their problem," Lin Fei replied. Lin's father nodded. As a wealthy merchant, he had heard of powerful martial artists who could be employed by others. But he never thought that his own son would one day be employed by others. "Fei, 10 days ago, the prefect sent some gifts. He said that the Wen family had done us wrong in our past dealings and wanted to apologize." Lin's father continued. "I've been thinking these days that something seems off. Why would the Wen family suddenly send gifts? Fei, did you do something?" Lin's father and mother looked at Lin Fei with suspicion. They were not foolish. As a high-ranking official, how could the prefect easily apologize and send gifts? Moreover, the gifts were indeed sincere. Lin Fei immediately understood. It seemed that Wen Zhuan and Prefect Wen were both smart people. By sending gifts to the Lin family, they were actually expressing their stance. They did not want to be enemies with Lin Fei. "Mother, father, you can take the compensation and be at ease. I went to Luo City and unexpectedly ran into Wen Zhuan. She seems to be together with an inner disciple of Tuxia Mountain. The trouble I helped John's family solve was related to them. It's probably because Wen Zhuan told the prefect, so he sent the compensation." Upon hearing this, Lin's parents were shocked. "Fei, what did you do to make the prefect send compensation?" Lin's father's voice was trembling. "Mother, father, I've already broken through to the acquired realm. From now on, in Jumaotian Mansion City, no one can intimidate our Lin family. Nobody, not even the prefect Wen. From now on, Jumaotian Mansion City will listen to our Lin family." After finishing speaking, Lin Fei bowed to his parents and left, leaving Lin's parents in a state of shock. Back in his room, Lin Fei took out some miscellaneous items from his pocket. These things were all obtained from Qian. Among them was some silver notes. Lin Fei took a careful look. There were quite a lot, 160,000 taels of silver. If added the remaining 140,000 taels of silver bills that Lin Fei still had, he now had a total of 300,000 taels of silver bills on him. Who was Qian? Where did he get so many silver bills? Lin Fei was very curious. Even for an acquired martial artist, it was not easy to carry around tens of thousands of taels of silver notes so casually. This Qian's identity was probably not simple. Among the pile of items on the table, besides the silver notes, there was also a black iron token. Lin Fei picked it up and looked at it. It was a token with 4 small characters engraved on it. What does Earth 23 mean? Lin Fei flipped the black token over and over. He tended to think that it was a token that proved Qian's identity. Qian should belong to a mysterious organization. Earth 23 represented Qian's identity. Lin Fei couldn't find any other information about this mysterious organization for now, so he had to put the token away. This trip back to Lin's family was fruitful for Lin Fei. Not only did he obtain a large number of silver notes, but he also broke through to the acquired realm with the fusion of 3 inner powers. Even more importantly, Lin Miao could now refine pills. At least, he could refine some pills for martial artists. If Lin Miao became stronger and reached the level of Qi condensed, he could refine more valuable pills. Lin Fei went to Lin Miao's side courtyard. The atmosphere here seemed even eviler than before. Although this area was designated as a forbidden zone in the Lin family, there were still some servants who were curious and wanted to come in and take a look. But since Lin Miao set up the in-gathering formation, no one dared to come to the side courtyard anymore. Lin Fei opened the gate of the side courtyard. Even though he was already an acquired martial artist and had extremely strong physical abilities, having even practiced Vajra iron cloth, it seemed to have no effect against the erosion of the in-gathering formation on him. He felt as creepy as everyone else. The Qi cultivation system is completely different from the martial arts system. If I encounter a Qi cultivator, I must be careful and cautious. I must take the initiative and not give the opponent any chance to catch their breath, thoroughly killing them. Lin Fei's heart trembled. He thought again that although there were few Qi cultivators in this world, there must be some. If he encountered one in the future, he must not be careless. He must use his full force to crush or even kill them. Otherwise, some of the Qi cultivators' techniques could be mysterious and unpredictable, making it hard to defend against. Lin Miao. Young Master. Lin Miao seemed to be in his element in the in-gathering formation. He exuded a special aura that Lin Fei could sense. Lin Miao must have become stronger. Lin Miao, I will be leaving tomorrow and returning to 9 Profound Sect. Your first priority in the Lin family from now on is to practice hard and strive to reach the first level of Qi condensation. I will also have you refine some other pills in the future, which may be even more difficult. You must have a stronger spiritual power to support it. Lin Miao nodded and said, Young Master, don't worry. I have been cultivating in the in-gathering formation, and the effect is very good. I will work hard to reach the first level of Qi condensation as soon as possible. Good, then I can rest assured. Lin Fei looked around the room, which had become creepy because of the in-gathering formation, and suddenly had an idea. He blurted out, Lin Miao, do you know any methods for people without the talent to cultivate spiritual power and become a cultivator? Chapter 61. Martial artists cannot achieve longevity. Lin Fei had always had a thought in his mind to become a Qi cultivator. The reason was simple, lifespan. It was rumored that Qi cultivator experts could achieve longevity. But what about martial artists? Even innate martial artists could only live for a little over 100 years. Of course, low-level Qi cultivators were probably similar to martial artists. But what about high-level ones? There was always hope for longevity. On the other hand, no matter how powerful a martial artist was, no matter how mysterious their martial arts were, they would still turn into a handful of dirt after 100 years. Martial artists couldn't achieve longevity. Well, Lin Miao smiled bitterly and said, "Second young master, you've also read the zombie refining technique. There's no record of how ordinary people become chi cultivators. So, I don't know how someone without the aptitude for chi cultivator can become one. Moreover, I remember the young master asked me this question before." Lin Fei fell silent. He had indeed asked Lin Miao about it before. But Lin Miao only had a vague understanding of the chi cultivator before. "Lin Miao, have you not discovered anything during your time in the Lin family?" There was a glint in Lin Fei's eyes as he stared at Lin Miao. Lin Miao was a smart person. He immediately understood what Lin Fei meant. Lin Miao quickly knelt down and said, "Second young master, I've always been loyal to the Lin family and to you. All right, tell me about your discoveries." Lin Fei asked calmly, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. Lin Miao took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Second young master, I have indeed made some new discoveries during my recent practice. Especially after setting up the ingathering formation, I vaguely realized that the zombie refining technique is incomplete." "Huh? What do you mean?" Lin Fei raised his eyebrows and asked. "Young master, martial artists of realms. Body refining, acquired, innate, and these are all complete realms. So based on my speculation, there must have other realms above chi condensation. After all, just relying on chi condensation, it is impossible to have a long lifespan and live for a long time like the legends. At the chi condensation level, one still experiences aging, sickness, and death, and there is not much difference from ordinary people. But the zombie refining technique does not have the next step. That is to say, if one practices the zombie refining technique, they may never be able to reach the realm above chi condensation. I don't know if this is a limitation of the zombie refining technique itself or if it is incomplete." Lin Miao's discovery surprised Lin Fei. Chi condensation cannot get immortality. Or rather, the chi condensation realm cannot achieve immortality. One must reach a realm above chi condensation to do so. But what was above chi condensation? Lin Fei did not know. "Forget it, Lin Miao, focus on your cultivation. I will explore these secrets slowly when I'm stronger in the future." Lin Fei did not stay long and left because there was a ingathering formation there which could cause problems for his body if he stayed too long in the secluded courtyard, even if he was an acquired martial artist. After returning to his room, Lin Fei carefully thought about what Lin Miao had said. It seemed that achieving immortality was not that simple. Not every chi cultivator could achieve immortality. Maybe I will naturally understand some of these secrets when I reach the innate level. The night passed without any further discussion. The next day, Lin Fei bid farewell to his parents. He had to return to the Nine Profound sect. On his way back, Lin Fei did not encounter any troubles and returned to the Nine Profound sect smoothly. Lin Fei first exchanged all his 300,000 silver tickets for contribution points. He suddenly had 300,000 contribution points. By the way, let's change the token first. Lin Fei prepared to go to the transmission hall for certification. He would exchange his token for the acquired Realm 1. Although both were for inner disciples, some tasks in the mission hall could only be undertaken by inner disciples with an acquired realm token. This token was the only measuring standard, and so it was very important. Lin Fei arrived at the transmission hall and respectfully said to the elder there, "Elder, I have just broken through to the acquired realm and have come to be certified and change my token." The elder in the transmission hall was somewhat surprised. Generally speaking, although inner disciples might not change their tokens with every level breakthrough, almost all of them at the 9th level of body refining would definitely come to change their tokens. But what about Lin Fei? He had gone directly from the 7th level of body refining to the acquired realm and only now had come to change his token. This was quite surprising. In fact, it was not that Lin Fei was too patient, but that he had just broken through to the acquired realm soon after reaching the 7th level of body refining and did not have time to go to the transmission hall for certification and to change his token. The elder in the transmission hall took out an oval-shaped blue stone and said to Lin Fei, "Place your hand on the blue stone. Activate the inner power in your body. If you can leave a mark on the blue stone, the certification will be successful." "I understand," Lin Fei nodded. It seemed that this blue stone was quite special. Once inner power was activated, the blue stone would change. This made the certification process quite straightforward. Otherwise, if each disciple came to be certified and tested each other's inner power, it would be very dangerous. If two martial artists' inner powers conflicted, there would be big trouble. Therefore, Lin Fei placed his hand on the blue stone. He activated a small amount of inner power and infused it into his palm, leaving a light imprint on the blue stone. Chapter 62. Secret discovered. Suddenly, a strange change occurred when Lin Fei's palm was imprinted on the blue stone. Crack! The hard blue stone suddenly split into 4 or 5 pieces. Lin Fei was stunned. He really only used a little bit of inner power. He didn't mean to show off his inner power at all. He was even very cautious. "Elder, this..." Lin Fei didn't know what to say. Swish! However, the elder suddenly stood up, staring at Lin Fei with sharp eyes. "You have combined 3 types of inner power." The elder of the transmission hall had seen many talents. But combining 3 types of inner power was definitely the top talent among the top talents. There was even hope to achieve the innate realm. "Elder, I didn't mean to." Lin Fei did not answer directly. Instead, he frowned. He didn't want to reveal the secret of his 3-fold inner power. Upon hearing this, the elder of the transmission hall snorted coldly and said, "It is an advantage to practice without arrogance or impetuosity. But don't always think about hiding your strengths. Young people should have their own edge. The martial arts path is like sailing against the current. You will retreat if you don't advance. The sect does not like top talents with 3-in-1 inner power. Although they are rare, they do exist. What are you hiding?" Nowadays, the trend is getting worse and worse. Many young people are obviously talented, but they still insist on hiding their strengths. They don't realize that the sect has various resources tilted toward top talents. Even top martial artists and even innate masters are willing to take disciples and guide the outstanding disciples of the sect so that they can take fewer detours. Lin Fei, right. Are you still hiding your strengths now? The elder of the transmission hall sat down again and stared at Lin Fei. Lin Fei pondered for a moment, then bowed and said sincerely, "Thank you for the elder's guidance. I do possess triple inner power." "Which martial arts did you practice?" the elder asked. "I have practiced the giant whale body refining technique, tendon transformation and bone forging technique, and Vajra iron cloth separately." Lin Fei answered honestly. Blood and chi, tendons and bones, skin and membranes, 3 types of inner power merged into one. "No wonder the blue stone shattered," muttered the elder of the transmission hall in a low voice. Seeing that Lin Fei seemed confused, the elder explained with a smile, "The blue stone is used to test the disciple's inner power. Usually, no matter how strong the inner power is, even at the peak of the acquired level, it cannot break the blue stone. However, its internal structure is very special. Once someone merges the 3 types of inner power into one, even if it's just a little bit, that kind of inner power can shatter the blue stone. So, this is also a method the sect uses to identify some top talents, so as to avoid losing them due to concealing their abilities and neglecting to cultivate them, which leads to these top talents taking many detours. Remember, the sect is not your enemy, and you don't need to be wary of it everywhere. On the contrary, the sect is your home and your strongest backing. If a disciple encounters danger or even dies outside the sect, the law enforcement hall of 9 Profound sect will investigate it thoroughly and give the disciple justice. Lin Fei hurriedly saluted and said, "I understand, Elder." Upon careful consideration, Lin Fei had never heard any rumors about disciples fighting each other in 9 Profound sect. At most it was just some healthy competition. Only in this way can the sect maintain its cohesion and truly develop and grow. All right, here's your nameplate. However, you should not cultivate any acquired level martial arts for the time being. But it's okay to practice combat martial arts. I will inform the sect master of your situation. I believe the sect master will arrange for an innate level expert to take you as their disciple. At that time, there will naturally be an innate level expert to guide you on how to choose acquired level martial arts and continue to practice martial arts. Only in this way can you avoid taking detours and advance in one go, reaching the innate level. The elder of the transmission hall spoke much more than usual today, all because 9 Profound sect had produced a good seedling, and he was itching to see how far Lin Fei could go. Unfortunately, he himself was not an innate level expert. There was an unwritten rule in the sect. All those who have triple inner powers could only be accepted as disciples by an innate martial master. This was to avoid delaying the progress of top talents. For a martial arts sect to become strong, innate martial masters were the key factor. The more innate martial master there were, the stronger the sect would be. Every disciple who has triple inner powers could be considered a potential innate martial master, and the sect would do its best to train them. Thank you, Elder. All right, go. The elder in charge of transmitting techniques waved his hand, and Lin Fei turned around and laughed. Watching Lin Fei's figure disappearing into the distance, the elder in charge of transmitting techniques revealed a smile at the corner of his mouth. Another good potential disciple who has triple inner power. I wonder which elder will step forward this time to accept him as a disciple. Last time, the elders fought fiercely for such a disciple. Whatever, this matter is still something that the sect master has to worry about. The elder immediately got up and left the hall. He had to report to the sect master himself. Lin Fei had already left the hall. He remembered the warning from the elder in charge of transmitting techniques. Since I cannot practice martial arts at the acquired level, I can choose some combat martial arts to practice. Lin Fei didn't know when he would be accepted as a disciple by the senior members of the sect and be taught martial arts. He couldn't practice martial arts at the acquired level before the senior members of the sect made a decision, but it was for his own good, so as not to take the wrong path in the future. However, he couldn't neglect his combat martial arts. His saber skills were still far from producing saber intent. So, he headed straight to the martial arts pavilion. Chapter 63. Saber Drawing Technique. Lin Fei once again met the lazy elder of the martial arts pavilion. He presented the emblem to the elder respectfully and said, "Elder, I have come to choose the acquired martial arts." The elder glanced at the emblem and narrowed his eyes slightly. "You have become an acquired so quickly." "Not bad, not bad. However, I recall that you seem to have chosen 3 body refining martial arts. Which one gave birth to inner power?" This elder of the martial arts pavilion seemed to have some impression of Lin Fei. After all, disciples who chose 3 body refining martial arts were still few in number. Lin Fei looked at the elder of the martial arts pavilion and did not conceal anything. He replied, "Elder, I have given birth to inner power in all 3 martial arts." 3 in 1. The elder's muddy eyes seemed to clear up all at once, and a sharp light flickered. "Your inner power indeed is 3 in 1. The elder of the martial arts pavilion looked deeply at Lin Fei, assessing him up and down. Then he sighed deeply and said, "Seems that I underestimated you. When you came to choose martial arts at the martial arts pavilion, I thought you were ordinary and even a bit presumptuous. But I didn't expect that you would really give birth to 3 kinds of inner power and even fuse them into one. If I remember correctly, the 3 body refining martial arts you chose were Giant Whale Body Refining Technique, Vajra Iron Cloth, and Tendon Transformation and Bone Forging Technique. Chi and blood, skin and membranes, and tendons and bones, all are complete. Lin Fei remained silent. The elder pondered for a while and said, "All right, go to the 2nd floor. You can still choose 3 acquired level martial arts for free. However, don't choose any acquired martial arts that you can practice until after you have a teacher. Your master will teach you. The elder of the transmission hall has already reminded me of this." "Thank you, elder. I was talking too much. Go ahead, go ahead." Lin Fei bowed to the elder and then went straight to the 2nd floor of the martial arts pavilion. The 2nd floor was different from the first. All of the martial arts here were acquired level. Therefore, the number of people was also very few. After all, the number of disciples at the acquired level was far less than that of the body refining level. Lin Fei's selection of martial arts was also well planned. Weapons, boxing, and lightness skill. For weapons, Lin Fei chose the saber technique. For boxing, he chose the Dragon Elephant Vajra Fist. As for lightness skill, he chose the flowing clothes skill. Among them, Lin Fei had achieved perfection in both the saber technique and the boxing, but the flowing clothes skill was only at the transcendence level. However, Lin Fei did not care as long as it was usable. There was no need to waste time and energy on it. As for the saber technique and boxing, both could be taken to the next level, but Lin Fei had not made any progress in understanding the meaning of the Dragon Elephant Vajra Fist. Perhaps practicing other basic boxing techniques could help, and he needed to go to the 1st floor of the martial arts hall to make his selection. Lin Fei's primary goal was to select the saber technique, so he went to the bookshelves where the saber techniques were located. The main characteristic of his 9 shadow saber technique was speed, and the saber techniques he acquired now would also follow this direction. Therefore, Lin Fei naturally chose fast saber techniques, such as blinking saber technique, empty flash saber technique, one-stroke kill saber technique, thunder flash saber technique, and so on. He saw rows of saber techniques on the bookshelf one after another, all of them fast saber types. Lin Fei felt a bit dazzled by the variety of techniques, each had its own unique features. Lin Fei didn't want to make any choices. He wanted them all. However, the reality was that he only had 3 free opportunities to select acquired martial arts, and any additional martial arts would require expensive contribution points. Moreover, it would be more difficult to reach the perfection level for acquired martial arts, and if he couldn't reach that level, it wouldn't increase his proficiency in the saber technique or help him understand its meaning. Therefore, Lin Fei ultimately decided to choose only one saber technique after much consideration. This technique was called the saber drawing technique and was described with only a few words: fast, accurate, and ruthless. Blood would surely be spilled when using this technique. With his decision made, Lin Fei went straight to the elder. "Elder, I have chosen my martial art, the saber drawing technique. This is the secret book of the saber drawing technique. As usual, you have only 1 hour to study it." "Yes, elder." Lin Fei received the secret book of the saber drawing technique and immediately entered the practice room. Chapter 64. 1/13 Shadows. Saber drawing technique. Inside the practice room, Lin Fei opened the saber drawing technique manual. There were very few words written on it. Saber drawing technique was actually divided into 2 parts. The first part was nurturing the saber, and the second part was unsheathing the saber. The first part was used to nurture the treasured saber with inner power in a special way. The second part was to unsheath the saber and kill the enemy when it was time to use it. The longer the saber was nurtured, the greater the power when unsheathing it. Lin Fei realized that saber drawing technique was just perfect for him. Other martial artists who practice saber drawing technique needed to spend time and energy nurturing the saber, but Lin Fei was different. His martial skills could self-practice. In other words, he could constantly nurture the saber 24 hours a day. Even if he only had one day, the power of the saber drawing technique would still be considerable. The downside of the saber drawing technique was that it was only one move, but Lin Fei was not concerned. He still had the 9 shadow saber technique, which was not inferior to any acquired level saber technique. It was more than enough as a basic move. If used well, saber drawing technique would be able to kill with one strike and turn the tide of battle. So, Lin Fei began practicing saber drawing technique. He had enough time to become a beginner in saber drawing technique. This technique was actually very simple. Both nurturing the saber and unsheathing the saber have a core, which was the way inner power flows through the meridians. In fact, saber drawing technique was about making inner power flow through several specific meridians in the hand. Usually, inner power was used to nurture the saber through these meridians. But when inner power explodes through these meridians in battle, it would be the real saber drawing technique. Basically, all acquired combat martial arts were like this. Compared to body-refining martial arts, the key of acquired martial arts was to use inner power to enhance explosive power. This applies to all martial arts, including fist, lightness, and sword techniques. If inner power was not used, it is not much different from body-refining saber techniques. But if inner power was used, the attack level was completely different. Lin Fei followed the steps of the saber drawing technique, slowly flowing inner power through the specific meridians in his hand. Lin Fei held the saber tightly in his hand. It seemed like he was intimately connected with saber in an instant. This feeling was very unique. Amazing, murmured Lin Fei in a low voice. He had never felt this way before. It was as if the saber had become a part of his body. Of course, this was just an illusion, a sensation that came from the nurturing saber. In the early stages of practice, it was necessary to hold a saber in one's hand. But in the later stages, one only needed to keep a saber nearby or carry it on one's back. After practicing for a while, Lin Fei had a distinct feeling that saber had come to life. Its power seemed to have increased a lot. Without hesitation, Lin Fei shouted in a low voice, "Saber drawing technique." Saber was unsheathed with a clang and emitted a sharp aura, directly cutting into the ground and leaving a large hole in the solid stone tiles of the road. Terrifying power, thought Lin Fei. I've only been nurturing saber for half an hour, and its power had already reached such a level. If I nurture saber for 10 days, half a month, or even a year, how much more powerful will it become? Lin Fei's eyes brightened. The power of the saber drawing technique far exceeded his expectations. He had only just started to practice it, and he was still just a beginner. Lin Fei carefully pondered. The strike from the previous use of the saber drawing technique not only had tremendous power, but it was also incredibly fast. Its speed was even faster than Lin Fei's 9 shadow saber technique. Of course, the fast of the 9 shadow saber technique and the fast of the saber drawing technique was different. The fast of the saber drawing technique was the purest form of speed, a direct and straightforward attack without any twists or changes. Meanwhile, the 9 shadow saber technique had a saber shadows that pursued how many times it could stack saber moves in an instant, and it had some techniques. Wait, what if I apply some of the techniques of the saber drawing technique to the 9 shadow saber technique? Would it work? A thought flashed in Lin Fei's mind. The saber drawing technique was indeed very fast, but it was only possible due to the inner power exploding within several special meridians in the hand. What about the 9 shadow saber technique? Lin Fei had an idea and began to mobilize his inner power to run within the several meridians of his hand. He then tried to perform the 9 shadow saber technique. As time passed, swish, suddenly, Lin Fei's inner power exploded, and the saber move was exceptionally smooth. Your 9 shadow saber technique has taken an unusual path and gained insight into the secret of inner power eruption. Its training progress has increased by 25%. The system's voice sounded in Lin Fei's mind. Lin Fei's heart was elated, and he slashed with the techniques of the 9 Shadow Saber technique. Swish! 13 Saber Shadows. As expected, Lin Fei's 9 Shadow Saber technique had improved once again, 1/13 shadows. Chapter 65. Can martial arts bring immortality? 13 Saber Shadows with 1 strike. My saber technique has improved again. Lin Fei's heart moved, and he immediately silently recited, "System." Suddenly, the system panel appeared in front of him. Host, Lin Fei. Martial Arts Realm, acquired 1st level. Dragon Elephant Vajra Fist, perfection, 0% progress. 9 Shadow Saber Technique, perfection, 43% progress. Saber Drawing Technique, beginner, 15% progress. Flowing Clothes Skill, Transcendence, 0% progress. Lin Fei saw the system panel and found that Saber Drawing Technique had just reached the beginner level, which was within his expectations. The progress of the 9 Shadow Saber technique had actually increased by 25%, reaching 43% progress, which was a remarkable leap forward. It must be noted that Lin Fei had incorporated some saber techniques that were slightly weaker than 9 Shadow Saber technique, and they were all in the perfection realm. But 1 saber technique only increased the progress of the 9 Shadow Saber technique by 2%. But now, Lin Fei had comprehended the secret of using inner power with the 9 Shadow Saber technique, which resulted in a 25% increase in progress. As Lin Fei slowly sorted out his memories of the 9 Shadow Saber technique, he gradually understood the reason for this. The reason why 9 Shadow Saber technique had such a significant improvement was that Lin Fei had paired it with inner power. By using inner power to execute 9 Shadow Saber technique, its power could be directly increased. This was equivalent to elevating 9 Shadow Saber technique from a body refining level martial art to an acquired level martial art. It was a qualitative leap. Therefore, the 25% increase in progress for 9 Shadow Saber technique was normal. Lin Fei was also certain that every time the progress of the 9 Shadow Saber technique increased by 10%, 1 more Saber Shadow would be added. So, it increased to 13 Saber Shadows from 10 Saber Shadows. Of course, it was not just the number of shadows that increased, but also the power of the Saber technique. The power of 1 strike with 10 Saber Shadows was vastly different from that of 13 Saber Shadows. Lin Fei felt that the time had come, so he got up and left the practice room. He had only selected 1 acquired level martial art this time and could still choose 2 more, but Lin Fei did not intend to choose any more. He decided to wait until he got a master before selecting any martial arts. So, he left the 2nd floor and arrived at the 1st floor. He spent some contribution points and took some basic boxing techniques within. These basic boxing techniques would slowly reach perfection with time. When that time came, he would incorporate them into the Dragon Elephant Vajra Fist, which would increase its foundation of it and improve its progress. Lin Fei returned to his courtyard and waited quietly for news from the sect. Sect Master. At this moment, in the main hall of the 9 Profound Sect, an old man with white hair suddenly arrived. Although the old man had white hair, he had a vigorous spirit and a healthy complexion, with no signs of aging. The master of the sect wore a gorgeous robe and quickly stood up to greet the old man, saying, "Greetings, Grand Elder Kunming." The white-haired old man was none other than the prestigious Grand Elder Kunming of the 9 Profound Sect. Every Grand Elder of the 9 Profound Sect was an innate powerhouse, and even the sect master did not dare to neglect them. Sect Master, you sent a message a few days ago saying that there was a talented disciple with triple inner power. His name is Lin Fei, right? Elder Kunming asked. Yes, his name is Lin Fei, the sect master replied. Have you investigated his background thoroughly? Elder Kunming asked again. Grand Elder Kunming, Lin Fei is a descendant of the Lin family in Ju Mountain Mansion City. He joined our 9 Profound Sect 3 years ago and only just broke through to the 4th level of body refining, barely qualifying for the outer sect, the sect master explained. Then, in just a few months, he made an incredible breakthrough from the fourth layer of body refining to the limit of body refining, and even birthed an inner power, breaking through to the acquired realm, he continued. The sect master had investigated Lin Fei's background thoroughly. Of course, this was not a secret. Someone who was interested and took a little effort could find out. Sect master, don't you find it a bit strange? Lin Fei was silent before, but now he has made a name for himself. Moreover, his cultivation speed is so fast. The sect master hesitated for a moment and nodded. I do have some doubts. Please enlighten me, Grand Elder. It's simple, martial arts heart. What do you mean? The sect master looked puzzled. Some people perform poorly in the early stages. That's because they haven't been under pressure. I think this son must have been under pressure during the 3-year period. So he finally broke through before the 3-year period arrived. Then he became unstoppable, probably because he had a firm grasp of his martial arts heart. To put it bluntly, he must have understood why he practices martial arts. Usually, these things can only be understood after reaching innate. Sect master, we martial artists are different from chi cultivators. For chi cultivators, talent and aptitude are the most important. Without talent and aptitude, everything is in vain. For us martial artists, the most important thing is intelligence and willpower. Only with excellent intelligence and a firm heart for martial arts can we overcome all obstacles and eventually reach innate. Sect master, you can bring this disciple into the hall and ask him. The sect master hesitated for a moment. The heart for martial arts, willpower, and intelligence. He felt that Grand Elder was not here to accept Lin Fei as a disciple but to give him guidance. He had been stuck at the peak of acquired for many years. Does he still have a chance to reach innate? Grand Elder, please wait a moment. I'm gonna call Lin Fei to the hall immediately. The sect master waved his hand. Immediately, someone went to the inner gate to call Lin Fei. At this moment, Lin Fei was practicing the saber technique in his own yard. Lin Fei, the sect master is summoning you. Hurry and follow me to the hall. Finally, Lin Fei stood up and followed the messenger martial artist. The sect master's hall was located in the center of the entire 9 profound sect. Lin Fei demonstrated his lightness skills and followed closely behind the messenger martial artist. After a while, they arrived at the hall. When he entered the hall, he saw 2 martial artists sitting at the top. One was a middle-aged man wearing a luxurious robe, exuding a majestic aura. The other was an elderly man with white hair and a sharp spirit. Greetings, sect master. Greetings, Grand Elder. Lin Fei immediately paid his respects. He had already received a message from the martial artist on the way here, knowing that the Grand Elder Zhao Kongming had personally come today. Most likely it was to accept him as a disciple. The sect master looked at Lin Fei and examined him up and down. Then he spoke in a deep voice. Lin Fei, just a few months ago, you were only at the 3rd level of body refining. In just a few months, you have progressed all the way to the acquired realm. Grand Elder Zhao Kongming told me that you have a heart for martial arts. I asked you, what is your heart for martial arts, or what is the goal you want to achieve in your martial arts practice? The sect master's words echoed in the hall, and also echoed in Lin Fei's ears. Lin Fei's heart trembled. He knew he had progressed quickly in his cultivation, of course. But Elder Zhao Kongming actually said he had the heart for martial arts. So what was his heart for martial arts? Lin Fei fell into deep thought. What was his purpose in practicing martial arts? After a long time, Lin Fei looked up and gazed at Elder Zhao Kongming. He asked loudly word by word, may I ask Grand Elder, can martial arts bring immortality? Chapter 66. 3 Vitality Technique. Can martial arts bring immortality? Lin Fei's voice echoed throughout the entire hall. This was Lin Fei's doubt. And also his insistence. His true purpose in practicing martial arts was to achieve immortality. Lin Fei's words made the sect master's gaze freeze. He did not answer, but instead looked toward the Grand Elder. The Grand Elder suddenly burst out laughing. Ha ha ha, that's a good question. Lin Fei, what if martial arts can grant immortality? What if martial arts cannot grant immortality? The Grand Elder's gaze was also fixed on Lin Fei. Without hesitation, Lin Fei answered calmly and firmly, if martial arts can grant immortality, the disciple will do everything in his power to pursue the pinnacle of martial arts. If martial arts cannot grant immortality. Lin Fei fell silent. Back in the Lin family, he had told Lin Mia that martial arts might not grant immortality, so he wanted to become a chi cultivator. But if he did not have the talent, no matter what, he could not become a chi cultivator. What should he do then? Lin Fei's eyes narrowed slightly. At this moment, he seemed to vaguely understand what the heart for martial arts was. Swish! Lin Fei raised his head, and a hint of determination appeared in his gaze. If martial arts cannot grant immortality, then the disciple will strive to make martial arts able to grant immortality. Lin Fei's voice was calm, but his tone was decisive. Ha ha ha, sect master, did you hear that? You were asking what the heart for martial arts is. And now, Lin Fei has already told you what the heart for martial arts is. This is the heart for martial arts. The sect master stared intently at Lin Fei. His mind was shaken. Until today, he finally understood what was the heart for martial arts. Grand Elder, I understand now, thank you for your guidance. The sect master respectfully bowed to the Grand Elder. Today, the Grand Elder's actions seemed to be to recruit Lin Fei as a disciple. But in fact, he was also enlightening the sect master. After all, the sect master got a quiet round the peak for many years. He was only one step away from being innate. But this one step was stuck because the sect master's will was not firm enough. He did not have the heart for martial arts. The elder nodded satisfactorily, and his gaze turned to Lin Fei again. Lin Fei, I can definitely answer your question. Martial arts can grant immortality. The Grand Elder's tone was very firm. Lin Fei felt a shock in his heart. He stared at the Grand Elder with a piercing gaze. Is it true? Ha ha ha, of course. However, it's very difficult to achieve. And that's something that comes after achieving innate. You should focus on achieving innate first before talking about eternal life. Now, I want to take you as my disciple, are you willing? Lin Fei understood that this was an opportunity, especially since the Grand Elder had given him the answer he most desired. Disciple pays respect to master. Lin Fei respectfully knelt down and paid his respects to the Grand Elder. Congratulations to Grand Elder for acquiring a good disciple. The sect master also congratulated Zhao Kongming with a smile. Good, Lin Fei, follow me. Zhao Kongming's figure flickered and he actually floated in the air. Step by step, he walked out of the main hall. Lin Fei was also extremely surprised, but he didn't hesitate and immediately displayed his lightning skill, chasing after Zhao Kongming's figure. Although Zhao Kongming didn't seem to be moving fast with each step, Lin Fei used all his strength but still couldn't catch up. Fortunately, Zhao Kongming's cave dwelling was not far from the main hall. It was located on a mountain peak in the Nine Profound Sect. There were many mountain peaks within the Nine Profound Sect, all towering high with cave dwellings on them. It was said that these cave dwellings were the residences of innate powerhouses within the sect. Shoo! Lin Fei came to a stop. He had already arrived at Master Zhao Kongming's cave dwelling. The cave dwelling looked very simple, with only some basic household items. There were several maids cleaning and tidying up inside the cave dwelling. Lin Fei, even though you have only acquired first level, you have the triple inner power and your foundation is extremely solid, so you have the potential to become innate in the future. However, this is only a possibility. Don't slack off in your training at the acquired realm. If you aspire to immortality, you can't train like an ordinary person. Your inner power is already strong enough. Therefore, you don't need martial arts that focus on increasing inner power significantly. You should seek stability and consolidate your foundation. Only in this way can you have a stronger foundation after reaching innate and go further. Lin Fei bowed respectfully. Good, I will grant you the 3 vitality technique. This technique is a unique skill that I obtained when I traveled the world. Because it's special, it wasn't offered to the sect. So even the martial arts pavilion doesn't have this martial art, only my disciples can practice it. The 3 vitality technique increases inner power only slightly, and once it's practiced to the peak, it's somewhat challenging to break through innate. But its greatest effect is stability. It opens up the meridians very steadily. No matter how difficult the meridians are, they can be opened one by one, only the speed differs. Ordinary people may not be able to reach their peak even after practicing for decades. That's because their basic inner power is average. But you are different. When you practice the 3 vitality technique, you can continuously gain inner power from your blood, skin, and bones. So when your 3 vitality technique reaches its peak, your inner power will also be immense. By then, breaking through innate will not be a problem at all. Lin Fei seemed to understand, and Zhao Conmin explained it to him in detail. He even started practicing the 3 vitality technique on Lin Fei's body. Zhao Conmin used his innate true qi to help Lin Fei's inner power circulate 1 revolution, letting Lin Fei become a beginner in the 3 vitality technique. This was the benefit of having a master. He could be guided at any time, avoiding taking the wrong path. Lin Fei stayed in the cave until dusk. Zhao Conmin waved his hand and said, "All right, you can go down the mountain first. Now that you have learned the 3 vitality technique, if you want to learn any combat martial arts, you can go to the martial arts pavilion to choose. Most martial arts are available in the pavilion. You will still live in the inner gate. If you have any questions about martial arts, you can come to the cave to find me directly." "Yes, Master." Lin Fei nodded. Although he had become the disciple of the Grand Elder, it was not that contribution points could be used infinitely, nor could martial arts be learned casually. That was simply impossible. With a master, the greatest benefit was to be able to receive guidance. Lin Fei would continue to live his life as he always had. By the way, you have 2 senior brothers and a senior sister. You will know more about them when they come back. Lin Fei nodded. "Master, I take my leave." After speaking, Lin Fei didn't disturb Zhao Conmin any longer. He went down the mountain directly and returned to his residence at the inner gate. Once he arrived at his residence, Lin Fei recalled the 3 vitality technique his master had taught him today. For a moment, a gleam of light flashed in his eyes. The 3 vitality technique is slow. Not necessarily. Lin Fei silently thought to himself, "System." The system panel appeared in front of him. Chapter 67. Triple Wave Technique. Host, Lin Fei. Martial Arts Realm, acquired 1st level. 3 Vitality Technique, 1st level, 2% progress. Dragon Elephant Vajra Fist, perfection, 0% progress. 9 Shadow Saber Technique, perfection, 43% progress. Saber Drawing Technique, beginner, 80% progress. Flowing Clothes Skill, transcendence, 0% progress. Lin Fei saw the system panel and found the progress of his 3 vitality technique had reached 2% in just 12 hours of training. This technique could increase progress by 1% every 6 hours, making his progress quite steady and reliable, just as Zhao Conming had said. At this rate, with 24 hours of training per day, Lin Fei could cultivate without stopping and increase its progress by 4% every day. In less than a month, he could break through to the 2nd level. As for the future, that was another matter. At least for now, Lin Fei's training speed was fast. Lin Fei also learned that the acquired realm was not the 9 levels he had imagined, but 12, corresponding to the 12 meridians, also known as the 12 regular channels. If the human body was compared to a country, these channels were like canals and roads that connected the whole body and were very important. The purpose of inner power was to slowly open these channels, allowing the inner power to flow freely. Once one reached the peak of the 12th level and accumulated enough inner power, they could attempt to open the Rendu channel of the 8 extraordinary meridians. If successful, it would be the innate realm. Therefore, inner power was just a tool for opening the channels. Lin Fei chose the Han Tai-In Lum Meridian as his first channel and opened a little bit every day. At this rate, in about 20 days, or less than a month, he could open the Han Tai-In Lum Meridian. Lin Fei carefully experienced this process. His 3 vitality technique was constantly running within his body, generating strands of inner power from his membranes, blood, and tendons, which eventually converged together, making his inner power grow stronger and stronger. For now, I don't have to worry about inner power. As time passes, my inner power will become even stronger. Now, I can go pick some acquired level lightness and fist techniques. Lin Fei had already made a plan in his mind, but it was getting late in the day, so he decided to go to the martial arts pavilion tomorrow. The night passed without incident, and Lin Fei rested for the night. Sure enough, after about 12 hours, his progress in the first level of the 3 vitality technique had increased by 2%. It made a whole day's progress, reaching 4%, just as he had estimated, which made Lin Fei even more reassured. Lin Fei could now use the remaining 2 free spots for martial arts with peace of mind. He left his residence and went to the martial arts pavilion. Upon seeing Lin Fei, the elder of the pavilion narrowed his eyes and asked, "Lin Fei, which elder did you apprentice yourself to?" "Disciple apprentice to Grand Elder Zhao." "Elder Zhao the Empty Abyss Sword." Back then, Elder Zhao had a formidable reputation in the martial arts world with his Empty Abyss Sword. His one-man, one-sword style was renowned throughout the world. "Unfortunately, it seems like you're using a saber, young man. If you're interested, I can recommend some powerful sword techniques for you." The elder seemed to know something about Zhao Kongming's reputation, but Lin Fei shook his head and said, "Disciple is also comfortable with the saber, so there's no need to trouble elder. Suit yourself." The elder lost interest and reclined in his chair, closing his eyes. Lin Fei turned and left, heading to the 2nd level of the pavilion. Although his master was a master of the sword, Lin Fei had no intention of giving up his saber technique, as he was already close to producing saber intent. Once he produced saber intent, it would be on par with innate. Switching to a sword now would be like giving up a watermelon to pick up a sesame seed. Even if his martial arts could self-cultivate, it would still be difficult to master them to perfection and even to produce saber intent or sword intent. Lin Fei had never expected to master everything. That was impossible. He only needed to master his saber technique, his fist technique, and his lightness skill. Lin Fei wanted to pick a fist technique first. He had previously practiced the Dragon Elephant Vajra fist, which was already perfection level. He intended to use it to comprehend fist intent, so even if he had to pick an acquired level fist technique, it would have to be a powerful and forceful type, similar to the Dragon Elephant Vajra fist. Lin Fei walked up to a row of bookshelves. On them were all kinds of martial arts techniques. Empty Bright Fist, 7 Winds Fist, Shaking Mountains Fist, Devil Bull Fist. There were so many martial arts techniques that it was dazzling. However, Lin Fei eventually picked one. Triple Wave Technique. This was the martial art that Lin Fei chose. According to the introduction, the triple wave technique could mobilize the power of the whole body, including the power of qi, blood, muscles, and bones. Then, each punch would be stronger than the last, like waves in the ocean, one wave after another. This was very suitable for Lin Fei. Lin Fei had very strong physical fitness. If he couldn't use his physical advantages in martial arts, it would be a waste. Then, Lin Fei also picked a lightness skill. This technique was not as demanding. The lightness skill that Lin Fei chose was called the leaping technique. It was very different from the flowing clothes skill. The flowing clothes skill was very light and agile, allowing for quick movements in a small space. The leaping technique was different. It was an instantaneous explosive lightness skill that could make people travel a long distance in an instant. Its speed was astonishing. Lin Fei's lightness skill was actually very difficult to achieve perfection level. He didn't even think about achieving perfection. Therefore, when he chose the lightness skill, he naturally tried to make up for some of its shortcomings. The flowing clothes skill was agile but lacked explosive power and speed. The leaping technique made up for this deficiency. Lin Fei chose the two martial arts techniques and went straight to the elder. "Elder, I have chosen these two martial arts techniques." The elder handed Lin Fei two secret manuals and said, "As usual, you can only read them for 2 hours." Lin Fei entered the practicing room. He was familiar with the place. Inside the practicing room, Lin Fei opened the triple wave technique manual. Before this, he had only seen a rough introduction to it. But now, as he read through the contents, he realized just how extraordinary the triple wave technique was. It used the circulation of inner power to stack power in a special way. The triple wave technique only had 3 moves in total, but each move was more powerful than the last. However, in the beginner and proficient stages, the amount of power the triple wave technique could stack was very limited. But once one reached mastery, it was different. In the mastery realm, the second move could stack 30% of the power from the first move, and the third could stack 30% of the power from the second move. If one reached transcendence, it could stack 50% of the power. And if one reached perfection with the triple wave technique, it was even more terrifying. The power of the second move would be doubled, and the power of the third would be also doubled from the second. This meant that if one used the third move of the triple wave technique at the perfection realm, its power would be 4 times that of the first move. It was equal to unleashing 4 times the amount of power. Chapter 68. Treasured Sabers. After some practice, Lin Fei got to the beginner stage of the triple wave technique. Next was the leaping technique. The leaping technique was actually a way of propelling oneself upwards. Although inner power only flowed through a few meridians, the span it would cross was very large, almost from top to bottom. Such a long-distance span would cause a great loss of inner power each time it was used. So, even if an acquired martial artist would get very taxing on their inner power. But Lin Fei was different. His inner power was 3 in 1. Based on this, his inner power would only become more and more powerful in the future. The leaping technique was very suitable for him. After about half an hour, Lin Fei had basically understood the leaping technique. He stood up. The room was too narrow. The leaping technique allowed him to move straight up and down, and he could cover a very long distance in one leap. So, Lin Fei left the room. Whoosh! The next moment, Lin Fei's inner power was activated. Immediately, his legs seemed to have infinite strength. Moreover, his body suddenly became light and ethereal. His whole body was like a phantom. In an instant, he leaped across dozens of meters. This leaping technique is really something. Lin Fei was very satisfied with the leaping technique. System. The system panel appeared in front of Lin Fei. Host, Lin Fei. Martial Arts Realm, acquired first level. 3 Vitality Technique, first level, 4% progress. Dragon Elephant Vajra Fist, perfection, 0% progress. Triple Wave Technique, beginner, 5% progress. Leaping Technique, beginner, 2% progress. 9 Shadow Saber Technique, perfection, 43% progress. Saber Drawing Technique, beginner, 80% progress. Flowing Clothes Skill, Transcendence, 0% progress. Lin Fei saw that he had entered the door for both the triple wave technique and leaping technique. Before reaching mastery or even transcendence, these martial arts would gradually improve. There was also the saber drawing technique, which was currently at the beginner level and had not yet reached proficiency. By the way, I've been using inner power to perform saber techniques lately. This saber seems to have trouble handling the explosive power of inner power. Also, the saber drawing technique is incredibly powerful. The longer I've been nurturing my saber, the more terrifying its power becomes. So, I have to switch sabers. Only a treasured saber can withstand the explosive power of the saber drawing technique. Lin Fei's saber was just an ordinary one. It was fine for body refining, but not for the acquired. When an acquired martial artist used inner power, the explosive force was not something an ordinary saber could handle. After a few uses, the saber might break. Lin Fei left the martial arts pavilion and went straight to the treasure pavilion. He now had 300,000 contribution points. There were also elders in the treasure pavilion, all of whom were acquired level martial artists. There was no bargaining in the treasure pavilion, and it was different from ordinary shops. He went to the elder in charge of the treasure pavilion and respectfully said, "Elder, I need a treasured saber that can withstand the explosive power of inner power." The elder looked at Lin Fei and then walked over to a shelf full of sabers. All of these can withstand the explosive power of inner power. However, the weapon must fit the martial arts and be compatible with the techniques. What saber techniques do you practice? Lin Fei didn't hide anything and replied, "Elder, I practice the 9 shadow saber technique and the saber drawing technique. I've already reached perfection in the 9 shadow saber technique." I didn't expect you to be a saber genius. Your proficiency in saber techniques is so high. The 9 shadow saber technique and the saber drawing technique are both fast saber techniques. Therefore, the large saber on your back isn't suitable. How about this? I suggest you choose 2 treasured sabers. One for everyday use with the 9 shadow saber technique, and one for nurturing the saber without unsheathing it. Lin Fei thought it made sense. Otherwise, he would only have 1 treasured saber, and he would have to unsheath it every time he practiced the 9 shadow saber technique, which would prevent him from nurturing the saber. He needed 2 treasured sabers. Lin Fei respectfully bowed to the elder and said, "Disciple is not a master of the treasured saber. I hope the elder can help me choose one. For your 9 shadow saber technique, use a good star saber. This star saber has a special material that can withstand the explosion of inner power, even if used at the peak of the acquired realm. As for your saber drawing technique, you need a truly treasured saber. Here is a hidden saber. It was specially crafted by a senior in our sect. That senior had perfected the saber drawing technique. With the saber drawing technique, I had no idea how many strong enemies he had killed. The hidden saber doesn't look conspicuous, but its material is even more special. Once the inner power explodes, the saber body can even become thinner, making the saber faster." Lin Fei also nodded and said, "Since it is the elder's recommendation, disciple will take the star saber and the hidden saber." Okay, the star saber is 1,000 contribution points. As for the hidden saber, it is 5,000 contribution points. So expensive. Lin Fei was surprised. The hidden saber was really expensive. It was equivalent to 5,000 taels of silver. This was a truly treasured saber. However, the hidden saber was really suitable for the saber drawing technique. Moreover, Lin Fei was not lacking in contribution points now. So, he spent 6,000 contribution points to buy 2 treasured sabers. Lin Fei carried the star saber on his back. As for the hidden saber, its body was shorter and suitable for hanging on the waist. And on the waist, it was also suitable for nurturing the saber. Although Lin Fei spent 6,000 contribution points, he had still over 300,000 contribution points. And every month, inner disciples could get contribution points. Therefore, contribution points were not lacking in the short term. Lin Fei didn't need to do tasks. Instead, he focused on staying in the inner sect. In the following period of time, Lin Fei really didn't go anywhere. He stayed in the 9 profound sect all the time. Whether it was the 3 vitality technique, saber drawing technique, leaping technique, triple wave technique, and so on, they were all in the early stages. It was a time of rapid progress. Therefore, Lin Fei didn't need to worry. He just needed to wait patiently. Time passed day by day. In a blink of an eye, 2 months had passed. In recent days, Lin Fei seemed to have heard that the inner disciples were discussing something. It seemed that the task hall had issued an unusual task. And it seemed to be issued by Lin Yera. Senior Sister Lin Yo encountered some trouble and actually went to the task hall to issue a task. Lin Fei had been in the inner sect for 2 months. He had spent almost most of his time in his own yard. He didn't have many friends in the inner sect. Lin Yero was one of his close friends. Since it concerned Lin Yero, Lin Fei was also very curious. So, he got up and went straight to the task hall. Inside the task hall, there were still many people. Lin Fei glanced around. Soon he found the task issued by Lin Yera. Recruiting disciples at the 4th level of acquired or higher. Assist Lin Yero in competing for the position of princess and you can get 500,000 contribution points after the event is completed. The task may be life-threatening, so consider carefully when you come. The content of this task was very simple. However, there was a lot of information revealed. Compete for the position of princess. Lin Fei narrowed his eyes. It seemed that Lin Yero's identity was not ordinary. After all, the surname Ling was the royal surname of the Great Chan dynasty.